Okay, last section of this chapter, we're looking at inter developing intercultural communication competence. Remember, the journal that I had you do for chapter 1 was Spitzberg and Kupach's assessment of communication competence, and now we're folding in the intercultural aspect of it. So you're going to see there's a lot of similarities, it just goes a little bit deeper. I would like you to make sure that you do on page 79, assessing your communication, what is your intercultural competence, and then you see the results on page 85. Okay, so we just put it on one screen. All right, so similarly to just plain interpersonal communication competence, you have to be motivated and you have to have the right attitude. If you don't care, not going to happen. Right? If you go in thinking, oh, these terrible people who don't know how to speak good English, you're going to have problems. Okay. New for intercultural communication competence is some tolerance for ambiguity. If you are speaking with people from a different culture, even if it's the same language, let's say it's still English, you're going to be in situations that are not clear right away. So you've got to realize that things that you are saying won't be clear, could be misinterpreted, and things that other people are saying won't be clear and could be misinterpreted also. So there's a nice little story in the textbook about a person, I think he was in Japan. Yes? Yeah. And he was in Kyoto and he met someone and he talks about how their communication was filled with ambiguity. Okay. So obviously you have to be open-minded. You have to realize that your way of doing things is not the way of doing things. So you want to be free of both ethnocentrism and prejudice. Well, ethnocentrism is believing that your ethnicity is at the center, right? It is that your culture is superior to other cultures. And then obviously ethnocentrism leads to an attitude of prejudice where you feel intolerant to people who are in an out group. Well, they don't have the same cultural codes that you do. So obviously they're not part of your group. So obviously they are suspect in some way. So that's something to work on. This is the tolerance for ambiguity and the open-mindedness are more for intercultural communication than just plain. I sound like I'm talking about M&Ms. Plain or peanut. Okay. Similarly, with communication competence, you have to have knowledge of what is a correct or an effective and appropriate way to communicate. And then once you have that knowledge, you start to develop those skills. Okay. Just because you have a good attitude doesn't mean you have the knowledge and the skills. All right. You have to also deal with the... I should have indented that one. Mindfulness versus mindlessness. It's important to go into a situation, in a sense, being hyper aware of how people are communicating, because you want to replicate that or you want to understand that person. So if you just go in mindlessly saying, whatever I get, it's not going to be as effective as if you it's almost like you have to be hyper aware of what's going on. You have to kind of step outside of yourself and watch yourself interacting or communicating with other people to see how it's going. Sometimes you can ask other people to give you feedback. So there's a focus in research on page 82 that talks about the difference between how Americans communicate and how Swedes communicate, and they have some Americans in Sweden, and basically they are all about being mindful. Okay. And then it's important for you to have patience and to persevere, because I'm thinking, so I'm really internalizing this about when, after I graduated from college, after moving back in with my parents and younger siblings for a year of pretty much hell, I joined the Peace Corps, and I went to Niger in West Africa, and I was ready. I was definitely motivated. I was ready to love everything, and very different culture, not just, it wasn't an English-speaking country, and it's a third world country, and it's a predominantly Muslim country, and there was so much going on that I really experienced culture shock. And in order to move from culture shock to really adapting more to the situation that I was in, I had to be very patient, and I had to persevere. I could not get discouraged. Well, I mean, I could get discouraged, but then I had to pick myself up and what do they say? Get back on the horse once it throws you. And in fact, I made some of my colleagues laugh when I said that my first year was really hard. And Wednesdays in the Nigerian system, we had classes all day, Monday and Tuesday, half a day on Wednesday, all day Thursday and Friday, and half a day on Saturday. And so Wednesdays were always, it's a little bit of relief. But they were also challenging because, it's Wednesday, it's hump day. And I just remember going back to my house and saying, I just want to go home. And the way I kept myself going was to say, you can't quit on a Wednesday. You can't quit in the middle of the week. You got to make it to the end of the week. So that was how I was able to persevere. Okay, so there is another video that I would like you to watch. And this pertains to being open-minded and not being ethnocentric. It's the Momondo, the DNA journey. I used to show this in class, and whenever I would put it on, I would frequently step out of the room because there's a part in it that always gets me all choked up. So thankfully, you can watch this on your own, and you won't see that I am ridiculously sensitive. I cry at the drop of the hat. I cry over commercials. So, okay. This is the end of chapter 3. So, take a look, and can you explain the relationship between intercultural and interpersonal dimensions of communication? Okay. And remember, there are parts where they kind of overlap. Do you remember what the 5 key values that shape a culture's communication are? And can you figure out generally where the United States is and maybe where you are? Because you could be, let's say the United States, as I said, is more low context, but you and your family could be more on the high, towards the high context end of the continuum. Remember, this section was not complete. It wasn't exhaustive, but can you recognize the range of co-cultures in today's society and how co-cultural factors can affect interpersonal communication? These were looking at things like age and gender and sexual orientation. Can you explain some of the factors that attitudes, knowledge, and skills that are required for intercultural communication competence. All right, I look forward to seeing everyone on Wednesday. Make sure you fill out the pre-course survey and be ready to 1, ask questions about anything you didn't understand, and 2, share anything from your own life or TV shows that you've watched or movies that you've seen that pertain to this chapter. Okay, now let me do